Hi, welcome to Roboflow training movie. In this training movie, I will be talking about formula fields and table fields and how you can update them with Roboflow. So imagine that you have a catalog in which you just added a new formula field on record level, for instance, or on a table level. I created here two formula fields, and these formula fields will be populated as soon as some other value changes. In this case, I've defined that if the asset status is set, then also it will have a new value in the formula field. And the same here, if the additional information field is changed, it will also have a value in the formula field. Now with Roboflow, I can initialize these field values. I can set these field values. So I'm going to do that as an example. So we are going to go to Roboflow. And in this workflow, I have a query. Now imagine that you have a catalog with a couple of thousand records and you launch this workflow, then no worries, it will automatically run and update, and no problems. But if you have a catalog maybe with 1 million records and a lot of formula fields and triggers and stuff, so things that your Cumulus server has to activate, execute whenever field values change, then you might have to be a little bit more careful, and you may have to pace a little bit this process. So in this workflow, I built in two slow down procedures, as it says. First of all, I built in a maximum records per loop. So if I do a query, I might get, if I want to do all records, I get 1 million records, or I get 1,000 records. But maybe I want to pace it and say, okay, when it has executed 100 records, then you should go back to sleep. I only want to process a limited amount of records and then go to sleep. And when you come back from your sleep, then you process the next 10, etc., etc. So this is one thing that is built in this workflow, that it uses a parameter file in which I store the last value of the record that was processed. And that way I will always take the next record, and the next record with the next record ID. So you can initialize this in this workflow. I just initialize it to 0 to start from 0. And even if this workflow is then interrupted and you start it later, it can continue from the point where it stopped the last time. So this is a very useful feature. So these two parameters working together, and I'm using here that parameter in my query, and I'm also in my workflow then I'm storing the record ID each time I process a record in that file. Now the next thing I built in is a delay between records. So each time it does a save in the record, not table items, but just for the main record, it will automatically, for each record that it processes something, it will sleep for 1 second. It's just an example. You could put 100 milliseconds, you could put 10 milliseconds, or you could 5,000 milliseconds, whatever you want the delay to be. You can slow down the pace to avoid that your server is hammered, because if you don't put a slow down on this, this workflow might execute 50 to 100 records per second, which means that if there's a lot of triggers and stuff behind the scenes and formula fields to execute for the server, that suddenly your server might be very busy. And so that's why you can also slow down the process this way. So that's the second way to slow down the processing. Then what I defined here is, I said, okay, I have a table field. And in that table field, I only want to process the records where the asset usage is set to copy to. So in this example, this would be this one. And you could just leave, of course, the query empty, and then it would update and process all table record items. But this is an example. And then here I'm saying, okay, I'm picking up, I'm going to set the additional info value to test Roboflow. So that's just setting a record field of a table field. I also have the option to specify a name of a field for which I want the update formula to be executed, formula field. But I'm not going to run this now. We're going to do this in a second run, and I'll show you why. Then I have a secondary example of I'm going to set the status field of the record, and I'm going to set it to Roboflow. And then again, we have the same thing for updating the formula field of a record. At this point, I'm not going to do it, but we'll see it later when it comes in to be useful. So I'm executing the workflow. And if I do a show log, you will notice immediately that it has a lot of debug information in it. I have enabled it. So it processes a record, and then it opens the asset usage history. And then it does every asset usage history item in there. Actually, there's only one with a copy to. So then it goes to, and it says update record field with, and then it goes to the next record and the next record and the next record. So this is how it is processing it. And you can see it has record 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here it's at 6. And if I say refresh, you can see that here there is always a second, at least, difference between the records, and that is because there is this slowdown built in of 1 second. And additionally, if we come to the record 9, then we have from 0 to 9, we have processed 10 records. So it says, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep, and I built in a 30-second sleep of the workflow. So then after 30 seconds, it starts over again and it continues, and it goes on, it sleeps again, etc., etc. So that's how the workflow works. I'm gonna let it run for a while so that it can process all the records in the catalog. In the meantime, we will have a look in the Cumulus catalog at what happened in the records itself. You can see that I have set with Roboflow this field value, and I had a formula field that picked up that value of that field. So now this contains test formula. And the same here, I have set this field Roboflow with a value, and now we see, oh, careful, because I've set the value of the formula, and actually it says 3. And why does it say 3? Because it takes the index, because I said this is a drop down field, and so you have to be careful. I made a mistake in my formula, so I'm going to fix my formula, and then I'm going to have to update. And what can I do then? Well, that's when the workflow will come in handy, to be able to update the formula field without having to change a field value. So I'll fix the formula now. So I'm going to my catalog looking for that field, and I have to say in my formula field that I just not only want the field value here, but I actually want it as a string, and that's an additional parameter that you can add here. The true is telling the formula to have this field value as a string and not as the index of the drop down. And as a second example, oh, I'm going a little bit too fast here. As a second example, I could say, okay, I picked up in my formula field of the asset usage history, I picked up the wrong field. I didn't, or I'm going to change my formula field as well. For this formula field, I'm going to say, yeah, I actually didn't want this field, but I wanted to assign it to that field. So I'm going to pick up that value X. So I'm changing the formula field, and now again, this is a string list field, so I'm going to pick up as string. So again, if I go back to my catalog, if I made the changes, but this does not automatically update my fields. So we need to fire, we need to launch this again against, we have to tell Roboflow, hey, you need to update the formula field for that specific field. So instead of having to reset the values as we just did of text fields, we're now going to launch the workflow with a slightly different setup. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, okay, here this table name is still the same, this is still valid, but here this field, we're not going to update the additional info, and we're just going to make this empty. Then this workflow will just ignore that field, and we are of course not going to set a value then either. But what we are going to do is we are going to update a field, and that's of course very straightforward. All we need to do is in the catalog pick up the GUID of that field and the unique identifier. So here we go. So we go to the asset usage history, and we go to the formula. That's the one we want to update. Now a little trick: if you go here and you double click on the field name, it will have that name in its buffer. So now you can say, okay, and if you want to document this of what this actually is, you can say, okay, this is actually the formula field of my asset usage history. And then I want to do the same with the record. I don't want to set a field value, not at all. I want to launch an update of a formula field. So I'm going to go here. This is my update, and I'm going to again in my catalog pick up cancel. I'm going to go to my formula field, and I'm going to say I'm going to pick this up. So I double click here on this column, or you can do the same thing on the name, and I can just put here and I can say paste. Okay, so I'm going to stop my workflow for a second. I want to make sure that I reset my record IDs because it has been processing up to 281, but in reality you should have let it run till the end, of course, but in this example I just wanted to show you a couple of records. So I'm going to start again from 0 because now I want to update the formula field, or two formula fields in my catalog, being this guy and this guy. And once you're certain that your workflow is running like you want it, you can just turn debug off by setting this to false, and then you will have less logging information. It's important if you're going to do a big run of thousands and thousands and thousands of records, then don't put too much debug information in it. The debug is there to make it easy for testing if it initially works, and then after that you should just skip it. You can also set the start record ID, and so you can say, okay, I did my test on the first 100 records, and it went up to record ID 123. Well, then you can say, okay, it doesn't have to do the first records anymore. You can start from the next record after 123. So you put 123, and that will happen then. So now I say start. And exactly the same thing is now going to happen. It's going to process record by record, and instead of setting a field value, now it is going to update. It's going to update the formula. You can see update the formula, and here you see update formula field of a table record, and it's going over the same records basically, and the same record items, table items, and after 10 again goes to sleep, and it's exactly the same logic, but now it's not setting field values, it's updating formula fields. So let's see what the result of this is in our catalog. So you can see that this has been fixed, so it's now called formula is Roboflow instead of the 3 that we had there, and the same here. So instead of picking up this value, it now picks up this value, and the formula copy 2. So this is what this workflow can do for you. It can initialize, clean up your catalog, set some field values, or update some formula fields in table records or in the normal records. So thank you for joining this training movie. And if you have any questions, just let me know.